nationalism in America. What is most terrifying is the insidious growth of deadening nihilisms across political lines. Nihilisms that have been suffocating the deep democratic energies in America. Psychic depression, personal worthlessness, and social despair are widespread in America as a whole. The saturation of market forces in American life generates a market morality that undermines a sense of meaning and larger purpose. The dogma of free market fundamentalism has run amok, and the pursuit of profits by any legal or illegal means, with little or no public accountability, guides the behavior of the most powerful and influential institutions in our lives, transnational corporations. Our politicians have sacrificed their principles on the altar of special interests. Our corporate leaders have sacrificed their integrity on the altar of profits. And our media watchdogs have sacrificed the voice of dissent on the altar of audience competition. Political nihilism now sets the tone for public discourse, and market moralities now dictate the landscape of a stifled American democracy. The hallmark of political nihilism is the public appeal to fear and greed. They have given up any real hope of shaping the collective destiny of the nation. Sour cynicism, political apathy, and cultural escapism become the pervasive options. He will use clever arguments to rationalize his will to power and deploy skillful strategies denying the pain and suffering he may cause in order to shape the world and control history in light of the pursuit of power. Most Democrats fail to follow their conscience, following instead the polls and their re-election strategies, that corporate influence and lobbyist clout run the U.S. government. A political nihilist is one who is not simply intoxicated with the exercise of power, but also obsessed with stifling any criticism of that exercise of power. The political nihilism in America today is not limited to the arena of party politics. It has infiltrated our media culture as well in the form of sentimental nihilism. Our market-driven media have become much too constrained in the coverage of unpleasant truths, much too preoccupied with the concerns and views of middle-class and upper-class white people, and much too beholden to the political persuasions of the media moguls. Democracy depends in large part on a free and frank press willing to speak painful truths to the public about our society, including the fact of their own complicity in superficiality and simplistic reportage. From the birth of American democracy, then, the battle was raging over the scope of freedom, the reach of equality, and the tension between democratic and xenophobic elements. The most painful truth in the making of America, a truth that shatters all pretensions to innocence and undercuts all efforts of denial, is that the enslavement of Africans and the imperial expansion over indigenous peoples and their lands were undeniable preconditions for the possibility of American democracy. It is no accident that from the nation's founding, 1789, to the Civil War, 1861, the vast majority of Supreme Court justices, the highest rule of law in the land, were slaveholders and imperial expansionists. And for 49 of these 72 years, the presidency of the United States was held by slaveholders and imperial expansionists. And the only ones re-elected president were slaveholders and imperial expansionists. This despotism would be guilty of genocide against indigenous peoples and unable to create a multiracial democracy owing to the deep white supremacist practices of the country's tyrannical majority. Would race and empire undermine American democracy? Lincoln exemplifies the integrity of democratic energy. He knew that democratic experiments require not only courageous truth-telling but also practical wisdom. Only the accountability of an informed citizenry and the intractability of a just rule of law can thwart the nihilism of imperial elites here or anywhere else. King provided America with our last great call to conscience about the intertwined evils of race and empire, calling on us to choose between democracy and empire, between democracy and white supremacy, between democracy and corporate plutocracy. Americans must realize that America truly has become an empire, a military giant, a financial haven, a political and cultural colossus in the world. To talk about race and empire in America is to talk about how one musters the courage to think, care, and fight for democracy matters in the face of a monumental eclipse of hope, an unprecedented collapse of meaning, and a flagrant disregard for the viewpoints and aspirations of others. In short, we are a democracy of rebels who nonetheless recreated in our own new nation many of the oppressions we had rebelled against. The key reason women could not vote until 1920, indigenous peoples until 1924, and most blacks until 1964 was that they could not bring organized democratic pressures to bear in order to limit the power of wealthy white male citizens. Yet when they marshaled that organized force, they got the vote.